So, hey friends, today's video is going to be pretty interesting because I think I'm going to be covering quite a bit of material that I have covered in previous videos. So, in previous videos I've talked about crises, it's time to do what you thought was too crazy. I talked about isolation, that was kind of my first post pandemic video. I talked about boredom, optimism, depression being the collapse of meaning, storytelling, and motivation, and nerdiness and ambition. And I'm going to cover all of those things in today's video, I believe. I didn't make it, there's no script, so I'm just going to figure this out as I go. So, I decided that today's video is going to be about rerouting. And when I say rerouting, I mean like narrative rerouting. And I'm talking about this in a very grounded, personal way. So, I was planning to have a trip at the end of this month. I was planning to go to New York City for 3 weeks, around like the last couple of weeks of April and the first week of May. That is not happening anymore. My flight got cancelled, and I think by early March, even before COVID started really, as the situation developed, it became very clear that just travel was not going to be an option. I don't even know if there are going to be flights from Singapore to New York, and even if there were, it's not what I want to do, right? Because my plan was to go to New York and meet lots of Twitter friends. What happened for me wonderfully last year in around the same time, April to May of 2019, was that I had friends in the Bay Area in California, and they wanted me to hang out, and I had a wonderful time. I was on my own, traveled alone for the first time across the planet, met friends from the internet, and just had this really nourishing, positive social experience. And it changed my life in many ways. It made me, develop a better relationship with myself. It helped me develop more of an abundance mindset. It helped me just, it was for me, it felt like a very special moment. It felt like a transition point. It felt, almost like a Cinderella's ball kind of moment. Like, oh, this is what, in the frame of the story that I'm telling, that is kind of the turning point, or like the activation point, the point at which it became clear to me what I should be doing in my life, right? Like when before that, my life was very much grounded in my home city of Singapore, and I had friends from all over the world, and I still have friends from all over the world. And my goal after my San Francisco trip was that I was going to start visiting major cities around the world and organize meetups and introduce friends to each other. That is still my goal in life, but present circumstances have made it such that is not possible for the foreseeable future. How soon am I going to be able to get on a plane and fly somewhere and organize meetups? If I'm really lucky, and if the world is really lucky, because not because of me, but just because, if things really work out beautifully, maybe this year, maybe like September or something. But I don't think it's realistic to hope for that. I don't think it's realistic to expect that / plan for that. And it's possible that like travel is just not going to be an option for over a year, maybe 2 years. That's pretty bleak, right? It's pretty sad. And it's interesting how realizations seem to take a while to set in. Like, so what I mean by that is that, this is the year that I turned 30. I'll in June, on June 6th is my birthday. And I was really looking forward to visiting the Big Apple before I turned 30. And having, bringing my wife there. Like, it was to be kind of a honeymoon for us, because we never really did any substantial traveling since we got married. We've done like small little, getaways to Thailand, like from Singapore to Thailand. It's like, it's a small thing. It's like a weekend thing, or like a 4 or 5 days thing. This was going to be 3 weeks. And it's only just beginning to properly dawn on me that I had planned, like, and it wasn't a very explicit, well, it is pretty explicit by my standards, but I subconsciously, at some level, I was counting on the New York trip to be a source of meaning for me, to be a source of, to be something, a great thing for me to look forward to, a challenge, right, to overcome, uh, a joy to participate in. It was gonna do a lot of things for me, I believed at the time. And I still believe that when I eventually go to New York, it's gonna be like that. And not because there's something magical about New York itself, though I'm sure there are many magical things about New York. But just again, traveling, leaving your comfort zone, leaving home, going to another place across the planet, meeting friends that meeting wonderful people that you've maybe written to but have never seen in real life, and just everything about that experience was gonna be such a substantial thing. Like, I guess people usually say things like, it's like Christmas is cancelled or something like that. Like, and for me, this is the culmination of like many, many Christmases in a way, right? It's like it would be the second time in my life that I would travel to the other side of the planet, and it would be the first time I do it with my wife. And, it would be the first time that I do it with as much, what's the word? Kind of conviction. So with my San Fran trip, it was kind of a, let's see what happens. I don't know what to expect. Let me go along for the ride. There will still be some of that in my eventual New York trip, but this was going to involve more agency on my part. I was going to plan more. I was going to set things up, right? And that's not going to happen now. And it is now dawning on me that if I'm not careful, right, if I don't reroute, and that's what this video is about, if I don't reroute, I would very easily fall into a kind of limbo where since my plans fell through, I don't have anything else in mind. I think the odds of serendipity happening is decreased because people in general are all kind of, there may be some forms of it that I'm not, I can't anticipate. So there's always unknown unknowns that you can't account for. But like the known unknowns, the positive known unknowns have fallen off a cliff, right? So I can no longer count on there's gonna be cool things that's gonna happen to me in a couple of weeks' time, and so I don't need to worry so much about my narrative, so as to speak. So, and again, my wife and I, we've been living and working from home for a couple of years now. So it's not like living at home is something new. There's nothing new about what I'm doing. There's nothing new about this environment. Even at this point, this is like the 30 something, I've made like 30 videos with that backdrop of my closet and my door. And already it's starting to feel a little bit stale. To me, right, it's starting to feel like, I'm seeing the same shit over and over again. And I was kind of looking forward to doing like a vlog, like using my phone camera, I guess, and doing like, hey, here's where I am, here's what I'm doing. And yeah, I could do it around the house maybe, but, it's just not the same, right? And so the challenge for me is to remain upbeat. No, that's not the right frame, So the interesting thing that I didn't realize at the start when I was going to make this is that, but it's dawning on me now, is that, you can't, well, the old saying that is relevant because it's cliche because it's true, is that you can't play the cards you wish you were dealt. You have to play the cards that you are dealt. And, right now we have been dealt this hand where we have to stay at home. And, we are relatively privileged compared to most people, I think, in the world, because we have savings, we have each other, we have a home, we have the work that I do is kind of remote to begin with, so I don't have any kind of everyday concerns. Like, I'm not worried about survival, I'm not worried about how I'm going to pay my bills for the next few months. Mainly I'm worried about like bigger, like Maslow's hierarchy kind of big picture concerns. And again, I don't entirely agree with the idea of a hierarchy to begin with, in the sense that, I do think that while poor people struggle with their day-to-day lives, it's not like meaning is something that they don't think about. It's just that it's manifest differently, right? Meaning you care more about family and belonging, and and they still make time for things that they love, right? They still have joy. They still play in the street. The kids still play in the streets. They still watch movies. They still have inner lives. It's not like just because life is hard, you become a robot, right? Like people who are struggling in robotic type situations, their pain, their emotional struggles are real as well. It's not like you have to be moderately wealthy to know what it's like to be depressed. I mean, maybe that's a different flavor of depression, but the depression is in relation to kind of the collapse of meaning in my frame, right? I'm sure there are other frames as well, but so the challenge for me is to find a way to reorient my life such that it's meaningful to me. And I guess what I have been I haven't said out loud is that if I don't deal with this, I'm pretty I can see how I could end up pretty depressed. And there is the depression that is unavoidable because it's chemical, or because it's and I feel like there is kind of like, while I have the privilege of the position that I'm in and the foresight that I have and the context that I'm in, blah blah blah, I can kind of see what would lead to a very depressing outcome for me, or a very depressing state of affairs. And where I am in life right now, I get to see that. I get to see that future, and I get to avoid it, I think. And so this is me trying to verbalize how I am rerouting. Right. And so for me, I think what is necessary for me is to construct new games to play, I guess. And so previously I was very invested in the I'm gonna travel halfway across the world game, and now that's not an option. I can be sad about that, I can grieve that potentially, but okay, and then what's next? And I think what's next is to rediscover what I have with me, and the first thing that comes to my mind is my bookshelf. I have lots and lots of books for years I've been meaning to read many of them that I haven't gotten around to reading. And I am, even before I traveled, I was already reading a bit. I was doing book threads, and I was getting some sense of meaning from sharing that with other people and getting their responses. And that felt, social and participatory, and it felt like I was learning stuff and becoming smarter in some ways and having new and interesting ideas. I want to do more of that. These videos are a part of it. So, as if I have this video challenge that I invented this challenge for myself, right? Which is I wanted to make 100 videos to see what it's like to make 100 videos and to get better at it, and to share it with other people. And someone replied to one of my tweets, which was a link to one of my videos, and he said, "Watching you do this in public has made me want to be more creative." I love that. I genuinely feel gratitude that I get to be a part of that process. I don't, it's not me. I didn't invent this. I didn't come up with this. I remixed it where it is the way I am from the influences that I've had from other people whose work I have benefited from and I have learned from, and I'm just doing what they have taught me, in a sense, right? And if it leads to other people doing their thing, then I am #blessed, right? And yeah, I guess that is what I'm saying. And it's I guess this is partially an affirmation, partially an invitation. It's about choosing to play the games that are interesting and have kind of substantial value. And once I'm done making this video, I'm probably gonna go and sit on my sofa and turn on my PlayStation and play some Witcher 3, which is, why not? It's a pandemic going on, right? But at the same time, for me personally, playing video games is I want to say it's partially about studying storytelling, which it is, and it's also mindless entertainment for its own sake, like to pass time, whatever. Like, I do. If I'm in the mood to make a video, I'll make a video. If I'm in the mood to write, I'll write. Sometimes I feel like it's necessary for me to write even when I don't really feel like I'm in the mood to write, because so one of the other things that I've been doing is that I wrote my first ebook and published it and sold it, and I've sold maybe 300 plus copies, and I want to update the first ebook, and I want to write a couple of other ebooks, and I think that the milestones that I will cross, so that itself, there's that ebook publishing journey that I'm on, and I think that journey is something that is it's interesting, it's nourishing, it's profitable, it pays for my bills partially, and it is something that I want to center in my life. So there's my ebooks, there's my YouTube videos, there's the books I'm going to be reading, video games I'm going to be playing. This year is a good year for video games. There's Final Fantasy VII's remake is coming out on April 10th. The Last of Us Part 2 is coming out next month, I think. And then at some point there's going to be Cyberpunk 2077, right? And I think it's very important, especially at this time when people are feeling isolated and quarantined or whatever, that we be very specific with ourselves about the things that we're looking forward to. So my wife and I have been procrastinating for, it feels like, over a year now. We each have these wooden tables. I mean, we both have tables that it's basically two like cabinets, table height cabinets, and then we have like this nice big block of wood as a tabletop, and both of our tabletops have not been treated, so they're basically dry wood, and we used to say that someday we'll sand them down and then treat them and make them kind of polished and nice, and we have been procrastinating on that for a very long time. Like I was still I think I was still working when we started, or maybe a while after that. But like that's like a 3 or 4 day project, and because you have to sand it, and then you apply a layer of coat, and then you let it kind of dry or set, and then you apply another layer of coat, and like that's a project. And I think now is the time for projects, right? So because and this goes into boredom, and it goes into motivations, and it goes into depression, right? Like if you are feeling depressed right now, I'm not trying to tell you that you can get out of it so easily. It's I've been there. Nothing really helps, right? I mean, I don't know. It's I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I'm just some guy. And I'm just saying that from my past experience and from my journaling and reflection on my own experiences, I know that if I don't start to be, conscientious about how I choose to have things going on in my life, me personally, I will probably spiral into becoming a lump, and then it's becoming like a couch potato. Like, sleeping really late, eating junk, eating more and more junk, drinking soda, eating potato chips, sleeping later and later, waking up bleary-eyed, tired, no energy to exercise, dehydrated, just miserable, and then once you're miserable like that, you don't really want to interface with other people, and then once you're not interfacing with other people, it gets worse, and just I'm aware of that how that cycle plays out for me. I don't know if it plays out the same way for you. I'm sure there's some of you who have similar experiences, and so again, this is not advice, it's just what I know works for me and what I am planning to do for myself, so that I come out of this sane, right? I come out of this kind of well-adjusted, so that I can have headspace and energy to help other people however they need to be helped. And so I might start journaling again. I think even my previous video, I was saying that I was getting tired of writing my 1,000 word vomit project, but maybe it's time to start it again. Like maybe again, like, so it's just rather than try to pretend that the world hasn't just asked me to shut myself in, right? Because that is what the world is asking of all of us, and that is how we save lives potentially, right? We each have to social distance or physically distance ourselves from each other. And I don't want to be in denial of that fact. Rather, I want to embrace what I think is the best possible thing I can do for myself and maybe for others in this space. And so, I remember what it was like when I was a soldier, and they're kind of like travel restrictions in a sense, because you can take maybe a few days off and get like approval for your overseas leave to go to. Nobody travels much when you're a soldier. Like, you get like a weekend getaway maybe, but like it's risky. Like, even if it's allowed, it's risky. You'll be stressed. It's just not fun. And so for 2 years, I have like 2 years of experience of being kind of beholden to the Singapore Armed Forces. And I remember what it was like at the time I was younger. I had no bills to pay, and I was living on military food. Like, I was taken care of in that sense. And I remember this feeling of being physically kind of trapped / isolated. When I say physically, I mean like so it's emotionally, I guess, or psychologically, and so it manifests in physical feelings. So even though you can walk around, like when you wear, like the regimentation of wearing a uniform every day and all of those things, having these rules to abide by, having to shave, having to cut your hair, all of those things, it's a kind of boxing, psychological, whatever, and yet it is possible to flourish in a box. Like, the human spirit is powerful, and we can be very creative, and people have survived in the most ludicrous of situations, like far beyond what we can imagine. And so again, I don't want to dismiss people's difficulties or challenges. I don't want to tell people that, oh, if you're suffering, just stop suffering. That's not what I'm trying to do here, and that's not what I think. I don't think that's possible anyway. But I think there are people, and I count myself in this, there are people who can unlock a lot of energy and power by reimagining their frames, right? So a new frame is imposed on you, which cuts things out of your previous frame. So in my previous frame, my New York trip was going to be a big deal, and now that's not going to happen. So my frame has gotten a lot smaller. But just because something is smaller doesn't mean it can't be more interesting, right? A book or a movie about a small thing can be much more evocative and powerful than a book or movie about a large thing, right? And so the challenge is, now that you're forced to reorient, now that you're forced to reimagine, to look at your life with a new perspective, right? Because now that there are a bunch of things you can't do, how does the new reality unlock new options, in a sense, right? So like what I said earlier, I think my wife and I will finally have time to treat and polish and sand our tabletops. And it's not just about the tables, right? It's about me and my wife spending time together, working on something together, getting something out of it together. Like it's never the thing itself. It's the journey around the thing. It's the process around the thing, right? And so I don't think that I have figured out every single thing that I'm going to be doing for this time period moving forward. I'm going to be making more videos. I'm going to be writing more. I'm going to be reading more. But yeah, I think just beginning with that idea in mind, which is that it does suck to have options taken away from you. It does suck to feel trapped and to feel like you've been kind of screwed over a little bit. But there is, I'm not, so I don't want to pretend that I'm like super excited or that I'm super happy when I'm not. I believe in being honest, and I am pretty sad about not going to New York. I was really looking forward to it. It was gonna be something that really meant a lot to me, and it's still, I do still believe that I'll eventually get to go. But the idea of, like my wife and I were even thinking that maybe we would have kids after the trip, and like how long do we have to wait to get to go again? Because if we don't get to go in the next year or so, if we want kids, we may end up having the kids before the trip, and then when is that trip going to happen? It might not happen. It might not happen for a long time, and I have to find a way to be okay with that potentially. I don't want to think that far ahead, but I don't want to not think that far ahead. I don't want to fixate on things I cannot control. But so the challenge that I have been handed is, how do I make the most of my life given these circumstances? How do we have a good time? How do we I don't want to say stay productive, but be interesting, be useful, to see the opportunities that arise. And would I say I'm optimistic? I trust myself, which is a very nice feeling. I was not someone who trusted myself growing up, and I think that I don't think there has ever been a stage in my life until now that I would have reacted to this as appropriately, or as magnanimously, as equanimously, if that's the right way of saying it, as I do now. And I'm grateful for that. I appreciate being the roommate of this guy. Right? I appreciate that if I'm like, in a quarantine, you're stuck with yourself, and I appreciate the amount of work that I've done on myself over the years, such that being stuck with myself is not unpleasant. But yeah, I'm going to try and write more. I'm going to try and revisit my notes. Yeah, there's a lot of notes that I haven't revisited in a while that, it's that I guess I was keeping in boxes that I haven't looked at in a while, and it's probably time to look at them and to see, what new connections I can make, what new and surprising things I can do to share with people. I do believe that it's not necessary for everyone to spend a lot of time and energy worrying about the news all the time. Like, a little bit is okay. Like, you don't have to spend hours a day following up and keeping tabs on the news, because you can take turns, right? And I don't know. I don't know where I was going with this video, but I don't think it's realistic to expect myself to come to this kind of nice and tidy conclusion at the end where, everything's going to be great, I've figured it all out, and everything's going to make sense now. I have some ideas, I have some thoughts, I have a sense of what I'm going to do next, but it is, there's no sugarcoating that we live in uncertain times, right? And things can get worse potentially, we don't know. But I guess I wanted to think out loud about this in case it's of use to anybody else. Not so much the message, not so much the message, but the vibe, I guess. And it will be interesting to look back on this, right? Like 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, I think it will, because time itself has been thrown into such disarray. We don't know what the future is going to look like. So it will be nice to watch this when, like, the day before I actually do fly to New York, I'm gonna say that as though it's gonna happen because I would like it to happen. And I hope everyone's well. I hope you have things that you are looking forward to, even if the things that you were originally looking forward to are no longer possible. I hope that you think about going to the books that you may have always wanted to read that you haven't gotten around to. I hope you do some texting and video calling with friends and loved ones that you may have wanted to talk to for a long time but you haven't. I think now's a really good time to reconnect with people, with old friends. And yeah, I wish everyone the best. I do appreciate that these times, they do feel quite universal. It does feel like the first instance of something in my life that I feel like I can say, we are all in this together, and that's nice in a slightly twisted way, right? Like there's a storm outside and we are all trapped inside, and we all know that everyone else is trapped inside, and there's something slightly comforting about that. And yeah, good luck and best wishes. Done.